The rain hammered against the windshield as Emma gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She'd been driving for 3 hours, checking every place that held meaning for them. The coffee shop where James proposed, the hiking trail they'd conquered on their first anniversary, the bookstore where they'd spent countless Sunday afternoons. Finally, she spotted his silver Honda parked outside their old apartment complex, the place where they'd lived during those impossibly happy first 2 years of marriage. Her heart seized. James sat motionless in the driver's seat, staring at nothing. Emma's hands trembled as she opened her car door. The February cold bit through her thin sweater. She'd left the house in such panic she hadn't thought to grab a coat. 3 days. It had been 3 days since he'd walked into their bedroom and found her phone screen up on the nightstand, Jordan's message glowing in the darkness. Tonight was incredible. When can I see you again? She approached his car slowly, as if he were a wounded animal that might bolt. When she reached the passenger window, she tapped gently. James didn't move. She could see his chest rising and falling, see the death grip he had on the steering wheel. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he reached over and unlocked the door. Emma slid into the passenger seat, immediately enveloped by the familiar scent of his cologne, mixed with the coffee he always kept in the cup holder. The intimacy of the space, this small capsule that had held so many conversations, so many stolen kisses at red lights, so many dreams shared during long drives, made her throat tighten. "James," she whispered, "please, just 5 minutes. Let me explain what happened. Let me tell you why." "Don't." His voice was hoarse, as if he'd been screaming or crying or both. He still wouldn't look at her. His eyes remained fixed on the apartment building where they'd made love for the first time, where they'd painted the walls together, where they'd danced in the kitchen at midnight to no music at all. "You don't understand," Emma said, tears streaming down her face now. "It's not what you think. Jordan and I—" "Stop." James's jaw clenched. His hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles cracked. "I don't want to know his name. I don't want to know anything. But if you just listen." He turned to her then, and Emma gasped. His eyes were devastated, hollow, like someone had reached inside him and scooped out everything that made him James. The man who laughed at terrible jokes. The man who cried during animated movies. The man who'd held her through her father's funeral and never once let go. "If I hear your reason," he said slowly, each word deliberate and final, "I'll hate you forever." The words hung in the air between them like poison. "Right now," he continued, his voice breaking, "I just hurt. If I understand why, if I know the details, if I hear whatever justification you've constructed, I'll hate you. And Emma, I don't want to hate you. I've loved you for 8 years. I don't want our ending to be hate." Before she could respond, he turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. "James, no. Get out of the car. Please. Get out." Emma stumbled out onto the wet pavement. Before she could even close the door, James threw the car into reverse. She watched, helpless and sobbing, as the taillights disappeared into the rainy night, taking with them the only man she'd ever truly loved. Emma stood in their bedroom, staring at the half-empty closet. James had come while she was at work. She'd returned to find his side of the space completely bare. No note, no forwarded address, just absence where presence used to be. She ran her fingers along the empty hangers, remembering how she used to steal his shirts, how they'd smell like him when she wore them to bed on the nights he worked late at the hospital. James had been, an ER nurse, devoted to saving lives while his own was crumbling. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd destroyed them while he was out healing strangers. Emma collapsed onto the bed they'd shared for 6 years and pulled out her phone. Jordan's messages still sat unanswered. She deleted them all, then blocked his number. None of it mattered now. What she'd done with Jordan had been a symptom, not the disease itself, but James would never know that. He'd refuse to hear it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Carter? An unfamiliar woman's voice. Professional. Careful. Yes? This is Patricia Chen from Morrison & Associates. I'm calling on behalf of James Carter. He's retained our firm to handle his divorce proceedings. The word divorce felt like a physical blow. Emma doubled over, pressing her free hand against her stomach. Wait, please, can't I talk to him first? Can't we? Mr. Carter has been very clear that he wishes to proceed as quickly and cleanly as possible. He's proposed a 50-50 split of all assets. He wants nothing but his personal belongings and half the savings. The house, the furniture, everything else. He's willing to sign it over to you. I don't want the house, Emma sobbed. I want my husband. There was a pause. When Patricia spoke again, her voice had softened slightly. Mrs. Carter, my job is to facilitate the legal dissolution of your marriage. I cannot provide relationship counseling. However, off the record, if you care about this man at all, the kindest thing you can do is let him go. He specifically requested that all communication go through our office. He doesn't want to see you or speak to you. After Emma hung up, she sat in the silence of their bedroom until the sun set and darkness filled every corner. She thought about calling her sister, her mother, anyone who might offer comfort. But how could she explain? How could she tell them she'd thrown away everything for a series of encounters that had meant nothing? Because that was the truth James had refused to hear. Jordan had meant nothing. Emma had met Jordan at the gym 6 months ago. He was charming, attentive, present in ways James hadn't been. While James worked 60-hour weeks, coming home exhausted and distant, Jordan had time. He listened to her talk about her frustrations with her marketing job, her worries about her aging mother, her loneliness. The first kiss had happened almost accidentally after a particularly intense workout. Emma had pulled away immediately, horrified at herself. But Jordan had smiled and said, "It's okay, I understand." And somehow, the understanding had felt like water in a desert. The affair had lasted 3 months. 4 encounters total. 3 in Jordan's apartment. 1 in a hotel when they'd both attended the same conference. Each time, Emma had felt disgusted with herself afterward. Each time, she'd promised it would be the last. Each time, the loneliness had eventually driven her back. She'd been planning to end it. She'd been planning to confess everything to James, to suggest couples therapy, to fight for their marriage. But James had found out before she could find the courage. Now, lying in their bed alone, Emma understood the cruelty of what she'd done. Not just the cheating itself, but the way she'd let their marriage deteriorate before the cheating even started. She'd pulled away from James first, stopped initiating intimacy, stopped sharing her feelings, stopped fighting for his attention when work consumed him. She'd given up on them before she'd ever touched Jordan. And James would never know, because he'd refused to listen. Emma had moved into a small apartment downtown, unable to bear living in the house full of ghosts. The divorce had been finalized with brutal efficiency, 6 weeks from filing to decree. James had signed everything electronically. She'd never seen him again. She'd quit her job, unable to focus, and taken a position at a smaller firm for less pay. She'd lost £15. Her mother had stage whispered to her sister during Sunday dinner that Emma looked haunted. That was accurate. She was haunted by everything she'd never gotten to say. On a humid August evening, Emma's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She'd learned to answer unknown numbers after missing several important calls from her lawyer, her landlord, various service providers. Hello? Emma. The voice made her drop her wineglass. It shattered on the kitchen floor, red liquid spreading like blood across the white tiles. James? Her voice came out as a broken whisper. He paused. She could hear him breathing on the other end. I shouldn't have called. No, please don't hang up, please. Emma was sliding down the kitchen wall, sitting in the broken glass and wine, not caring. I've wanted to talk to you so badly. I've wanted to explain. I know why you did it. His voice was flat, dead. Emma's heart stuttered. What? I figured it out. I've spent 6 months thinking about nothing else. I know exactly why you cheated, Emma. I know it was because I was never home. Because I prioritized work over you. Because I stopped making you feel loved or wanted or seen. I know. Then you understand. Understanding doesn't change anything. His voice cracked. That's what I've realized. I could listen to your whole explanation. I could hear every detail about how lonely you were, how neglected you felt, how I failed as a husband. And you'd be right about all of it. I did fail you. Emma was sobbing now, pressing her hand against her mouth to muffle the sounds. James, I failed too. I should have talked to you. I should have fought for us before it got that bad. I should have... I'm calling because I saw you today. The non sequitur threw her. What? At the grocery store. You were in the produce section. You didn't see me. He let out a bitter laugh. You look so thin, Emma. So tired. And I wanted to come up to you. I wanted to ask if you were eating enough, sleeping enough. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Emma's chest ached. Why didn't you? Because I realized something. I'm never going to stop loving you. The words should have been romantic. Instead, they sounded like a death sentence. And I'm never going to forgive you. Both of those things are permanently true now. James. I don't hate you, Emma. That's what I've realized. I told you I would hate you if I understood why you did it, but that was wrong. I understand, and I still love you. But love without trust is it's just pain. Constant pain. Emma pressed her forehead against her knees. What if we tried again? What if we went to counseling? I would do anything. I can't. His voice broke completely. Every time I close my eyes, I see you with him. Every time I imagine touching you, I imagine his hands there first. Every time I think about our future, I see you leaving me again. I can't live like that. I would never. You would. He said it with such certainty. Maybe not next month or next year, but eventually I'd fail you again. I'd work too much or not listen enough or forget an anniversary. And you'd find comfort somewhere else, because that's what you do when things get hard. You leave. That's not fair, Emma whispered. Maybe not, but it's what I believe now. You broke something in me, Emma. The part that could trust. The part that could feel safe. They sat in silence, connected by the phone line, separated by everything else. I'm moving, James finally said. Seattle. I got a job at a hospital there. I'm leaving next month. Seattle, Emma repeated numbly. 3,000 miles away. I need to start over somewhere you aren't. Somewhere I won't see you in the grocery store and want to ask if you're okay. Somewhere I can maybe, eventually, stop loving you. I don't want you to stop loving me. I know, but I need to, for my own survival. Emma heard him take a shaky breath. She imagined him sitting in some apartment she'd never seen, maybe with tears on his face like the ones on hers. I'm sorry I called, he said. I shouldn't have. I needed to hear your voice one more time. I needed to tell you that I understand, and that I forgive you, even though forgiveness doesn't fix anything. James, wait. Goodbye, Emma. The line went dead. Emma sat in the wine and broken glass until her neighbor knocked on the door, concerned about the noise. She let Mrs. Rodriguez help her up, clean the wound on her palm where a shard had cut her, sweep up the mess. She nodded when the older woman asked if she was all right. But she wasn't, and she wouldn't be. Because James understood, and it changed nothing. Because James forgave her, and it meant nothing. because James loved her, and it healed nothing. Some things, once broken, stayed broken. 2 years after the divorce, Emma received a letter forwarded from her old address. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. Inside was a wedding invitation. Dr. Rachel Morrison and Mr. James Carter request the honor of your presence at their wedding. Emma read it 3 times before the words made sense. James was getting married to someone named Rachel, a doctor apparently. They were getting married in Seattle on October 15th. She should have thrown the invitation away, should have sent a polite declination, should have moved on with her life. Instead, she bought a plane ticket. The flight to Seattle was turbulent, matching the storm in Emma's chest. She'd told herself she was going for closure, to see James happy, to finally let him go. But that was a lie. She was going because some sick part of her needed to see the woman who'd healed what she'd broken. Emma checked into a hotel near the venue and spent the morning of the wedding staring at her reflection. She'd regained the weight she'd lost, started therapy, even dated a few people, though nothing serious. She'd rebuilt her life into something functional, if not happy. But she still dreamed about James every night. The wedding was at a botanical garden, all glass and greenery and autumn light. Emma wore a simple navy dress and stood at the back of the ceremony space, behind a column where she could see without being seen. And then James walked down the aisle. He looked good, healthy. His smile was genuine as he took his place at the altar. Emma's chest constricted. She'd done this to him, forced him to build a life without her, and he'd succeeded. Then the bride appeared. But what struck Emma was the way Rachel looked at James as she walked toward him. Rachel was beautiful in an understated way. Dark hair pulled back, minimal makeup, a dress that was elegant without being ostentatious. It was the way Emma used to look at him before everything fell apart. Pure love. Uncomplicated joy. The ceremony was short. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," James pulled Rachel close and kissed her with a tenderness that made Emma's knees weak. This was what she'd thrown away. This was what she'd lost. Emma turned to leave before the recessional, but a hand caught her arm. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was low, angry. Emma turned to find a woman about her age, with James's eyes and his sharp jaw. His sister, Melissa, who'd stopped speaking to Emma after the affair came out. "I know," Emma whispered. "I'm leaving." "You've already done enough damage." Melissa's grip tightened. He finally found someone who doesn't break him every time things get hard. Someone who shows up. Someone who's present. Each word was a knife. Emma deserved every cut. "I just wanted to see him happy," Emma said. "No, you wanted to see if you still had power over him. You wanted to see if you could still make him hurt." Melissa leaned close. "You can't. He doesn't think about you anymore. He doesn't dream about you. He doesn't wonder what if. He's free." Emma pulled her arm away. "Good. That's what I wanted." Liar. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Melissa's expression shifted, just slightly. "He never told Rachel the whole story, you know. He just said you grew apart. He protected you even after everything you did to him. That's the kind of man he is." Emma felt tears building. "I know." "No, you don't. If you did, you never would have." Melissa shook her head. "It doesn't matter anymore. He's happy now, and you need to let him stay that way." Emma nodded and walked out of the botanical garden. She'd planned to leave Seattle the next morning, but instead she spent 3 more days wandering the city where James had built his new life. She ate at restaurants he might frequent, walked through parks he might visit, stood outside the hospital where he probably worked. She never saw him. Seattle was big enough that 2 people could avoid each other forever. On her last night, Emma sat in a bar near her hotel, nursing a whiskey and scrolling through old photos on her phone. There was one from their honeymoon in Costa Rica, both of them sunburned and laughing, covered in sand. James was looking at her like she was the most incredible thing he'd ever seen. "That your ex?" The bartender, an older woman with kind eyes, had noticed her crying. "My husband," Emma said, then corrected herself. "My ex-husband." "You still love him?" It wasn't a question. Emma nodded anyway. "What happened?" Emma told her everything. The loneliness, the affair, the way James had refused to listen, the divorce, the phone call, the wedding she'd just witnessed. The bartender listened without judgment, occasionally refilling Emma's glass. When Emma finished, the bartender said, "You know what I think? I think you're still looking for him to absolve you. You're still waiting for him to say, 'It's okay, I understand, we can try again.' But honey, he already gave you everything he could. He forgave you. He understands why you did it, and he still can't be with you. That's the end of the story." "How do I live with that?" Emma whispered. "Same way everyone lives with their regrets. You wake up, you put one foot in front of the other, and eventually, maybe not today or tomorrow or even next year, but eventually, you forgive yourself." Emma flew home the next morning. She deleted all the old photos from her phone. She threw away the wedding invitation. She signed up for a pottery class and adopted a cat. She stopped waiting for James to save her from her own guilt. 5 years after the divorce, Emma got a message from Melissa on social media. Just 3 words: "James is sick." Emma's hands shook as she typed her response. "How sick?" The answer came quickly. "Leukemia, stage 3. He's starting treatment next week." Emma stared at her screen. "Does he need anything?" "He has Rachel. He has family. He doesn't need you." But then, a minute later, "He asked about you last week. During one of his bad moments. He asked if you were happy." Emma closed her eyes. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know. Am I lying?" Was she happy? Emma thought about her life now. She'd been promoted at work. She had good friends. She volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends. She'd even started seeing someone, a kind man named Peter, who made her laugh and never pushed for more than she could give. "No," Emma finally typed. "You're not lying. I'm okay." She wasn't happy, but she was okay, and maybe that was enough. Emma sent a card to James's address in Seattle, care of Rachel. Inside, she wrote, "I heard you're fighting something hard. I know you'll win because that's what you do. You show up and you fight and you never quit. I'm rooting for you. I've always been rooting for you, Emma." She didn't expect a response. She didn't get one. 6 months later, Melissa sent another message. "He's in remission." Emma cried tears of relief for a man she no longer had the right to cry over. 2 years after that, Emma married Peter in a small ceremony with just their closest friends and family. Peter knew about James, knew the whole story, and loved her anyway. He didn't try to compete with a ghost. He just showed up, every day, exactly as he was. It wasn't the passionate, all-consuming love she'd had with James, but it was steady, safe, present. It was enough. On her wedding night, after Peter had fallen asleep beside her, Emma stepped out onto the balcony of their hotel room. The city stretched out below, full of lights and lives and possibilities. She thought about James for the last time, really thought about him, let herself feel the full weight of what she'd lost. She imagined him in Seattle with Rachel, maybe with children now. She imagined him healthy, laughing, looking at his wife the way he'd once looked at Emma. And then she let him go. Not because she stopped loving him, not because she stopped regretting what she'd done, but because holding on to that pain wasn't honoring their love, it was desecrating it. Their story had ended the moment she'd stumbled out of his car into the rain all those years ago. The rest had just been epilogue. Emma went back inside and curled up next to Peter. He stirred slightly, wrapped an arm around her waist, mumbled something unintelligible but tender. She pressed her cheek against his chest and listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. This was her life now, not the one she'd imagined, not the one she'd once had, but the one she'd earned through loss and pain, and slowly, painfully, learning to forgive herself. In Seattle, James dreamed of rain and empty cars and the ghost of a woman he'd loved enough to let go. When he woke, Rachel was beside him, their daughter asleep in the next room, his body cancer-free and strong. He didn't think about Emma much anymore. When he did, it was without bitterness, just a quiet sadness for the people they'd been before everything broke. Some loves were meant to last forever. Others were meant to teach you what you needed to learn before you could find the love that would last. He'd refused to listen to her explanation that night, because hearing it would have given him something to argue with, to negotiate with, to use as grounds for another chance. By refusing to understand, he'd made the ending absolute, clean, final. It had been the kindest cruelty he could offer them both. In the silence that followed, they'd each found a way to begin again. Not together, but alive.